Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'd like to start by noting that this webinar is being recorded, and we will share the slides and recording following the event. We're also going to transcribe all questions discussed during this webinar and publish those questions and answers in the coming weeks. So the formal document that comes after that will be considered the official Q&A for the grant solicitation, and I'm going to touch upon that a little bit later. In case some of you don't know, I'm Rachel Smith, and I'm a regional planner and grant manager here with MassDEP. I've worked on the Sustainable Materials Recovery Program since I started in 2019. I'll be running this webinar with assistance from the rest of the grant team who are acting as co-hosts today. They're going to help me by letting people in if they join late, monitoring the chat, and then we'll have presentations from them about their specific grant programs later on today, so you'll hear from them as well. This is our usual slide with housekeeping logistics. I think everyone is familiar with how Zoom works by now, so I'm not going to go into detail here, but for those of you who are just joining, I'm going to reiterate that we are recording this webinar and we'll share it in the slides again afterwards. So the SMRP grant program is big. Every year we award between $4 and $5 million to more than 275 entities. We look at hundreds of grant applications, thousands of RDP criteria, and thousands of data points submitted through our annual surveys. So we have a pretty big team. This year we have 6 people. I think you know most of us already. I've included information about the specific programs that each of these staff members leads and linked to their contact information. And then they'll introduce themselves when it gets time for them to present. In addition to MassDEP staff working on SMRP grants, we are also very lucky to have the support of 6 additional municipal assistance coordinators called MACs. You know these guys, they're doing the dirty work for me, reminding you about deadlines, reviewing your data to ensure it's complete and accurate, and nudging you to implement waste reduction practices. I'm so appreciative of them. I hope they know that they're really important to the success of our grant program. And not shown here, but I also want to give a shout out to the regional solid waste district coordinators who've been working with the municipalities in the state. I looked it up and there are actually 68 municipalities that belong to one of these districts. So out of 351, that's almost 20%. And if you're a municipality that's part of one of these groups, you know that there are a lot of benefits with regional collaboration, including increased opportunities for RDP points and therefore funding. These groups also do a lot of legwork in helping the municipalities to report to MassDEP and to apply for our grants. So thank you. Again, most of you know this already, but I just want to set the stage and make sure that we have context for the grant program that we're talking about today. SMRP was created through the Green Communities Act and MassDEP regulations that qualified municipal waste combustors to earn waste energy certificates, called WECs, under the state's Renewable Portfolio Standard. So under the state statute, the waste-to-energy plants are required to give 50% of the revenue earned from the sale of these credits back to MassDEP, and that's then put into a trust to fund our recycling programs. The WEC funds MassDEP staff, the MACs, our public-facing outreach and education programs, so that includes Recycle Smart and the Green Team, and then all of our grant programs. SMRP is targeted to municipalities, and that's what we're going to be focusing on today. This slide shows the most recent few years of SMRP grants, and you can see that we've generally increased the number of grants awarded over time. Last year, for the 2025 cycle, we awarded 347 individual grants to 280 municipalities or regional groups. Some entities received more than one award, which is always encouraged. In total, we awarded about $4.1 million in grant funds. We're estimating a similar budget this year, but it really will depend on the number and type of applications that we receive. Budget is just one aspect of our program. There are many considerations when evaluating grants. Most of you have seen this slide before, but as a reminder, here are some of the other things that we look at. So first, we look at whether we think the project or grant advances the goals and objectives of MassDEP's Solid Waste Master Plan. This is always at the top of our minds when we're designing programs and evaluating applications and proposals for grant awards. We also look at program data. So the information that you provide in the required recycling and solid waste survey, the RDP spending report, and in the responses to the grant application itself is all going to influence our evaluation and decisions for grant awards. In particular, questions in the grant application are meant to help us evaluate the need and impact of the specific grant item and the likelihood that the municipality would be successful in implementing it. So you might see questions about the number of households served, the trash tonnage for diversion, progress on any steps that are required for the grant. So, for example, if town approval is required, if additional budget is needed, if you've identified the vendors, haulers, contractors, things like that. We do consider past grant performance and compliance, and we may consider how grants relate to each other. So if you've applied for grants in 4 different categories, or even among other programs in the agency, or if you've never received a grant before, and this is your first time applying. And then finally, we're looking at whether your municipality is designated as a disadvantaged community. This is a little new. It's slightly different from the RDP application, which identifies a subset of RDP environmental justice populations, and that remains the same this year. But it means the same this year as it was for last year for RDP. But for all the other SMRP grant applications, this year we're going to be focusing on the disadvantaged community designation. It's historically been used by other grant and loan programs across MassDEP. Basically, a disadvantaged community is a municipality that falls within one of 3 affordability tiers using a calculation that's based on the state's adjusted per capita income. So it has to do with income, affordability, unemployment data, population trends, and some other factors. You can find more information through this link on the webpage, which you'll get after the event. Aside from RDP and regional small scale, the other 4 SMRP grant applications may have additional criteria that are designed to help us further evaluate and score those specific applications. Staff is going to note these at the appropriate sections during the webinar, and they're all identified and listed in the grant guidelines documents that are also linked throughout. So I mentioned program data in the previous slide and how it impacts grant evaluations. And I want to spend a little more time on it here because it's so important. Municipal trash and recycling data is used by many programs, even outside of the SMRP grant team, most notably the Solid Waste Advisory Committee and the recent EPR Commission. So thank you for continuing to report. We know it's a lot of work. There are more than 300 data points in the entire survey. And we know it's not perfect, but really it's the best way for us to evaluate the progress and the impacts of our programs and to help the department strategize priorities for going forward. Thank you especially to the 288 municipalities that submitted their recycling and solid waste survey data by the February 15th deadline. If you haven't completed it yet, there's still time to submit it. It is a prerequisite for RDP and for SMRP. So as long as you get it in by the grant deadline of June 1st, you are eligible for these grants. So we use recycling and solid waste survey data for RDP grant evaluations, but we also use it for RDP program development. And so as you know, we generally try to update and improve the RDP program every 2 or 3 years. We don't make decisions on a whim. Instead, we really look closely at what the data is showing over time and how that relates to the specific best practices in RDP. And what the data has shown is that municipalities that participate in the RDP grant program generate less trash than those that have not participated. The data also shows that generally, municipalities that implement more best practices identified in RDP have lower trash tonnage than those that implement fewer activities. So not only are they receiving more RDP funds because they're earning more points, but they're saving money by disposing of less trash. Less trash tonnage is less tipping fees. I looked closely at the top 20 best performing municipalities in terms of trash tonnage. So these municipalities average less than 750 pounds of trash per household annually. And we see that they are generally also earning the most RDP points. These top munis also have the following things in common. They all have a pay-as-you-throw program, which is no surprise. They all charge fees for bulky item collection, which is, again, is a form of solid waste reduction and closely related to pay-as-you-throw. Of the top 20, 18 of them have a charm, and 15 have residential food waste collection opportunities. There are some other statistics and information that we have extrapolated from our recent round of surveys. I don't expect you to memorize this or scrutinize it, but I just want to kind of show you some examples of how we use the data to look at potential trends that might influence our grant development. So right at the top, the line graph shows the number of municipalities collecting specific charm items. I picked this data set because last year in 2025, we made some drastic changes to the charm category in RDP, and we specifically required that municipalities collect both mercury items and textiles at least once a month for 12 months. We did this because these material streams were identified as priorities for the department, and we wanted to incentivize more collection opportunities for residents. The textiles, or the blue line, you can see that steadily increased, kind of a large jump in 2021, likely because of the looming waste ban. Mercury has remained steady over the years, but a noticeable jump between 2024 and 2025. So perhaps the charm requirement was helpful here. It's only been about a year or so. Time will tell, but it's something that we hope continues to increase. I included lithium-ion batteries on this chart because we're looking closely at current collections and trends and considering ways to incentivize ongoing and safe municipal collection for this material stream as well. The other bar chart here shows food waste tonnage collected over the past 5 years. You can see a distinct trend going up, which is great, but there's still a lot of work to do. We really want to continue to invest in food waste collection programs for municipalities, and that's one of the reasons why last year, 2025, we opened up a new grant program for municipal collection of food waste at drop-off sites, which you're going to hear more about later. Throughout this webinar, we're going to attempt to make it a little fun and interactive, and we will launch some polls showcasing certain data points that have influenced our work. So we'll talk a little bit about why they are important and why we have made some of the changes we have. There are 6 individual applications this year for the Spring 2026 grant cycle, and we're going to be reviewing each of these categories today. They are the same 6 categories as the last 2 years, though as you'll see, we've made a few changes, mostly clarifying information, but we've also added some options so you can access each of the details documents linked here. We've tried to identify anything that has changed or new in the documents by using both bold and yellow highlighted text. And finally, these are the important dates to remember for all SMRP grants. The time is ticking. You have about 8 weeks to get your application in. Please don't wait till the last minute. Most of you are familiar with the written Q&A process from last year. As a reminder, all questions regarding grants must be submitted to MassDEP in writing. Any questions that are addressed in today's webinar are going to be transcribed and will be included in formal written Q&A, which will post to the webpage on May 8th, along with any other questions that have come in through the online form. After this time, MassDEP cannot take any more questions. So you're going to have to rely on the grant guidance, advice from your MACs or your peers. A few exceptions to this rule would be like if you forgot your password and need to have it reset, or if you submit your application, but you made a mistake, so you ask us to unlock it so you can edit it. Of note, I did leave the Q&A from last year's grant period posted on the webpage, and since the grant offerings are mostly the same, these responses still apply. So that's another place to look if you're unsure about something. Finally, June 1st is the deadline. Staff spends several weeks in the summer conducting our evaluations. We may reach out to you if we have a question about something or need more information. If all goes well, we expect to award the grant this fall. In the past, we've awarded them anytime between September and December. Honestly, it's sometimes out of our hands, but we really do want to get these out ASAP. So please know we're doing anything that we can to make this happen. And please respond to us if we are checking in with you on something so that we can move things along.
What the fuck is going on here?
And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Becky Ferguson, who is our next presenter. And Becky, you might be muted.
Look at that. Hello. I'm Becky, and I will review the eligibility criteria for our SMRP grant programs, including the new EPP policy requirement. And then after that, I will discuss a couple of the grant options related to food waste. I'm going to go to the next slide. Before applying for any grants, your municipality must meet the minimum eligibility requirements, and they are passing or adopting an environmentally preferable products or EPP purchasing policy. I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. Completing the municipal recycling data reporting. This is what Rachel was talking about a few minutes ago in reference to the annual solid waste survey and the spending reports, and just how important that data is used, and how important it is and how widely used it is. And also confirming your municipality is in compliance with the Massachusetts waste ban, and then also confirming that you do not have any other compliance issues, not just with MassDEP, but with any other state agency. You will submit all of this information for these requirements in the retrack minimum eligibility criteria page. There's a screenshot of it right here. If you did not complete the last 3 check marks here by that February 15th deadline, you can still do that. You can still apply for grants, but your RDP score will be reduced by 1 point, and Kat will talk a little bit more about the RDP program later on in the presentation. I want to take a few minutes to talk about this first checklist, the EPP procurement policies. Hopefully, most of you have heard me or your MAC talking about these policies. We had a webinar last July, and the slides and the recording are posted on the website. I've attended several district meetings, and I know the MACs have been doing a lot of outreach, and it was also in the MAC newsletter. But if there's any chance that any of you haven't heard yet, we are updating the previous buy recycled policy requirement, and we are now requiring all municipalities to adopt an updated environmentally preferable product or EPP purchasing policy in order to be eligible for the SMRP grants. So far, we have over 100 municipalities who have a new policy that's been adopted, approved by their town leaders, and submitted to us. So thanks so much for all of the folks who did that. And for the rest of you, if you haven't done it, you just have a couple months left. And just to sort of take a step back and remind folks why we do this, we ask for purchasing policies because it's a key element in supporting our waste reduction efforts. This graphic is from the Recycling Partnership, and it shows all the stages of a really successful recycling system. You all work a lot on steps 2 and 3 here, and the MRFs really handle step 4. But that first step and that last step are just as critical to a successful recycling system, and it's really where your purchasing policies can have an impact. All of our efforts to run programs that reduce and manage waste and promote recycling will only have a limited success unless you couple those efforts with intentional purchasing practices. Collectively, on the municipal level and on the state level in Massachusetts, we spend money, like a lot of money, And we can leverage that spending. We can create, by leveraging that spending, we can create demand for products made with high levels of post-consumer recycled content. This supports the producers that are using recycled material in their products. We can reduce the amount of packaging we're purchasing. We can seek products that have low or no toxicity, both for our health and for the environment. We can reduce the amount of costly hazardous disposal that comes from buying hazardous products, and we can definitely enable more reuse. So hopefully these new purchasing policies we're asking you to adopt aim to do all of those things. The previous buy recycled policy you've all been submitting for grant requirements for years really addressed reducing waste and supporting recycling markets by prioritizing the purchase of office paper with recycled content. But there is so much more that our procurement practices can address. The new EPP policies will promote purchasing practices that conserve natural resources, that minimize environmental impacts, and that, again, prioritize reuse. And in addition to purchasing paper with recycled content, we want to commit to purchasing all kinds of products with recycled content, as well as products that are sustainably made, can be reused, and will last a long time. So we have created a template for you to use for your new policy. It's on the SMRP grant website. It's linked here. We also have examples of policies from other municipalities and additional resources all posted on our website. You can really just develop the best policy that suits your municipal priorities and resources. Maybe it's using the template. Maybe it's like tweaking your previous buy recycled policy, or maybe it's like doing a whole new policy. But we are going to look for 3 things, and your policy needs to include these 3 things to be sort of approved. The first one is a commitment to purchasing products and services offered through the Massachusetts Operational Services Division, or OSD's, Environmentally Preferable Products and Services Program. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in a minute. The second is an adherence to established criteria for minimum accepted recycling content when purchasing office supplies. So this is really just a throwback to your buy recycled policies and just sort of reconfirming that commitment. And then the final thing is really prioritizing reuse and donation. So this means committing to purchasing goods and equipment that are durable, that are reusable, that are refillable. And then when those goods and equipment are no longer needed, really prioritizing reuse and donation and utilizing surplus property networks before you dispose of them in the trash. So those are the 3 things we're looking for. Again, they're all in the template, or you can include them in your previous buy recycled policies. Next slide. So the reason we want you to commit to purchasing through the state EPP program, because this is really the easiest, most cost-effective way and impactful way for you to fulfill your procurement needs as a municipality, but also fulfill the waste reduction goals of these policies and of the state. The Massachusetts OSD has leveraged hundreds of contracts with vendors and service providers that meet established and really stringent environmental standards. So remember that first and last step in the recycling process, that's what this addresses. And if we prioritize purchasing off these contracts, we will be taking advantage of already researched and vetted projects that meet a set of standards for recycled content, for recyclability, for having eco-label certifications like USDA Organic or Energy Star certified. The products and services on EPP contracts are energy efficient, they're water efficient, they're durable, they're refurbished, they're remanufactured, they're repairable, and it's already been vetted and researched for you. So in most cases, the products on these contracts are also really competitively priced. I don't want people thinking that buying these products is going to bust your budget. I know budgets are tight. And in some cases, they're even more cost effective, the products you might find on the market. I think being on a state contract is really very desirable for vendors, and it really motivates them to offer competitive pricing. There are over 44 categories of EPP products and 31 categories of EPP services available for your municipality to purchase. Here are just some examples of products that are on these state contracts, and they're things that I know your municipality is already buying. And there are links here to these specific ones when you get this slide deck, but these are just some examples. So we really hope that the template that we have provided will be helpful, but I really want to emphasize that your policy, it could be much more robust or impactful or comprehensive, just really depending on the priorities and needs of your municipality. Here are some additional resources you could explore that will provide information, examples, and some additional actions that you could include in your EPP policy. So to summarize, these policies are due June 1st at the same time as your grant, but we encourage you to get a copy to me or to your MAC in advance. You will need to upload the policy into Retracker yourself. In past years, we've done that for you, but you need to do it yourself this year in that minimum eligibility criteria form. There is a template and additional guidance on our website, and we're looking for these policies to be approved by municipal leadership, preferably through a vote at a public meeting. And this really ensures that the policy will be part of the public record. And again, we have given you a lot of warning, so hopefully this requirement is not a surprise to anyone and you're already all working on it already. But if you have concerns or questions, please feel free to reach out to me or your MAC. And then next, I'm going to start talking about some of the grant opportunities. But before we get to that, we are going to launch a poll. And so Rachel is going to launch a quick poll. And the question here is, what percentage of the municipal waste stream is food waste? So we'll give folks a minute or two to answer. So we have a battle between 25% and 35%. All right, we're up to 75 answers. $85. That looks pretty good. And if we want to stop sharing now, it looks like most people said 35% with a 25% just behind that. And the answer was 25%. So that's pretty good. Nice job. All right, so we will get to, so you all know that diverting food waste from landfills is a big priority for the department. And for a while, it's been a priority for a while. And in recent years, we've updated some grant offerings to support municipalities in this effort, including increasing funds for curbside collection programs and adding a drop-off option. So I'm going to talk about both of those right now. I will start off with the collection cart grants. This grant is to fund curbside carts to collect food waste separate from trash and recycling. Eligible municipalities are those either starting a new program or growing an existing program. Municipal run programs are eligible, but also subsidized private subscription programs are eligible. So if your municipality has an opt-in private subscription program where residents pay a vendor directly to have their food waste picked up separately from the trash and recycling, your municipality is eligible for this grant, but you must contribute a minimum of $35 per participating household toward the cost of the subscription or toward an annual incentive, like purchasing the liner bags or some other incentive. The $25 per household funding through the grant can be counted towards that 35 total. And RDP funds can also be used for this contribution. The maximum award for this grant is 12,000 households or $250,000. If your municipality was awarded a food waste cart grant in the past but didn't meet that limit, you're still eligible to apply. So for example, if you were awarded a grant for 4,000 carts, you could apply again to purchase an additional 6,000 carts. Reimbursement for these grants are based on the number of carts that are actually distributed to households. So if carts are not distributed, then we cannot issue a reimbursement. You can purchase the carts in stages, and we'll ask that you submit no more than 2 invoices, but it's really important to have a plan to get the carts distributed in the time period, in the grant time period. And so that leads us to the implementation plans. Awardees of the food waste cart grant will be required to put together an implementation plan before their award is finalized. This plan includes a timeline for when the carts will be distributed, a budget, a finance plan, and sort of an explanation of the municipal contribution for the opt-in programs. The plan should include logistics and an outreach and education plan. We have found that a really robust outreach and recruitment plan is really critical for the success of the subsidized private subscription or the opt-in models. Here's the evaluation criteria for this grant. Again, I want to highlight the readiness piece and how important it is to understand the steps it'll take to implement the program. Again, the more you have thought this through and made plans for the program, the more successful your application will be and your program will be. So here's a link here to additional details about the grant. And next, I will review the drop-off grant for food waste collection equipment. Michaela will talk more in a minute about the rest of the drop-off grant offerings. And she'll also talk about the invoicing process. The food waste cart collection equipment category was new last year. Food waste drop-off programs are really a great way to introduce your residents to the idea and practice of separating food waste from their trash. These drop-off programs are really low impact, they're affordable to run, and if they're really visibly located with attractive signage, can be really a really great educational tool as well. Many drop-off sites are at transfer stations, but the grant will also fund equipment for drop-off sites on other municipal properties like schools, town halls, parks, or at council on aging properties. The grant will fund the carts and containers to establish a drop-off site. If you have a vendor that already provides the carts, you can still apply for the grant, and you would be able to direct those funds towards educational material, signage, or additional site improvements. You can also purchase items that may incentivize your residents to participate, like kitchen counter food scrap bins or liner bags. This is a reimbursable grant. The maximum reimbursement is $3,000 per drop-off site, with a maximum of 4 locations. So the total eligible grant amount is $12,000. And that's it. And Michaela will now review the rest of the drop-off equipment.
Great. Thanks, Becky. Hi, everyone. I'm Michaela Guglielmi. So in addition to those food waste collection at drop-off centers that Becky just went over, we have several other types of drop-off equipment available. Before I review all of those, we're going to have Rachel launch another poll. So how much funding do you think that MassDEP awarded for equipment for reuse and recycling at municipal drop-off locations in the 2025 grant cycle? All right. A lot of good guesses coming in. I think we're at about 70% participation if you want to reveal the answer. All right, so a lot of you guys were kind of close, but we actually invested more than you thought, $400,000, which is the most money that we've set aside under the drop-off equipment category in the last 10 years. And other amounts in this poll represent the other recent grant cycles. So you can see that we've made significant investments in this category over the past 4 years. And we intend to invest even more because we have a new equipment category in 2026 for bulky rigid plastics. And that'll be the first one I review on the next slide. So yes, we haven't offered the bulky rigid plastics grant since 2021. We first offered it in 2011 and it's back this year. And it's a priority for the department. We see a lot of potential for recycling here. Examples of this material could be plastic buckets or laundry baskets, lawn furniture, and especially for carts and curbside carts, we see those breaking a lot. So it'd be great to have an outlet to recycle that material. And this is a reimbursement grant for up to $8,000 for a 20 or 30 cubic yard open top roll off. Then we'll move on to the next category, which is cardboard compactors. And the target here is specifically OCC or old corrugated cardboard. It's not for mixed paper. And cardboard, it's a waistband item. There's an increase in shipping and boxes, and it's high value for recycling. And when OCC is compacted, it could save your municipality money because your hauler will have to make less trips to collect the bulky boxes. And this is a reimbursement for up to $10,000 for a compactor to flatten the OCC for more efficient recycling. And we brought this grant back last year for the first time, and we currently have 10 grantees in process. And we'll go on to the next one, which is our glass container for source separated glass. So curbside glass mix recycling isn't always as efficient. Source separated is better, so the material is more contained. And source separated glass also has a higher market value to recycle versus curbside glass recycling, similar to cardboard. And it's a reimbursement for up to $8,000 for a 20 or 30 cubic yard open top roll off. And we do require that roll off to be a heavy duty container. And you can also use grant funds to purchase a gable top, which you can kind of see in that first photo to cover the glass container. And this grant also came back last year for the first time, and we currently have 12 grantees in progress. And next we have our paint shed. And this is specifically for oil-based paints, varnishes, and stains. For latex paint, you could allow latex paint to be captured for reuse. Color is an example of a company that does that. You can also dry it out as regular trash. So if you want to collect latex paint as more of a favor to your residents, you're welcome to, but it's really only the oil-based paint that needs to be managed as household hazardous waste and collected by a specific vendor, which is why that's the main target for this grant. And it's a reimbursement for up to $5,000 for a shed or other enclosed weatherproof structure. And just like the previous two, this grant came back for the first time last year, and we have 10 grantees in progress. Now we'll move on to the reuse swap shops, and this is for reusable home goods and furnishings. So the first photo shows a more brand new shed from a grantee from last year. The second photo shows a shed that's been operating for a few years. And I also wanted to use these photos to highlight the difference in the style of shed. We have a metal shipping container versus a wooden shed. And it's really the grantee's preference as long as it's enclosed and weatherproof. And that goes for the paint shed and the universal waste shed, which I'll talk about next. It's really whatever structure works best for you. And this is a reimbursement for up to $8,000 for that structure. And we did increase this from $6,000, which we offered last year because we learned that munis needed some more funding for this. And there is a MAC webinar coming up on April 29th. So stay tuned. If you want to take a deeper dive on swap sheds, that would be great to attend that. And yeah, we have 15 grantees in progress from last year's cycle. And then the last category, we have the universal waste shed. This is a reimbursement for up to $5,000 for a shed or other enclosed weatherproof structure. Universal waste includes fluorescent lamps, batteries, mercury-containing devices, and then I just have a link to the Municipal Waste Combustor Partnership. If you have a partnership with the Municipal Waste Combustor, like Wheelabrator or Covanta, you wouldn't be eligible for this grant because those combustors have a material separation plan, and they're supposed to give you a universal waste shed for free through that plan. So if you think you might be one of those communities, just double check before applying for this grant. All right, so those are all the categories, and I'll go over a summary. Out of those categories, you can apply for up to 2, but it is a one-time grant once it's awarded. We have 2 state contracts. The first one, there's a new name for, it's WMR 001, and that's for household hazardous waste, universal waste, and the paint processors. And then FAC 113 is more the equipment itself, so sheds and the compactors and the bins. And yeah, just wanted to highlight a few evaluation criteria. These aren't the only factors, but some of the bigger factors that we consider when deciding who to award these grants to. So first is the facilities that are open to residents, non-residents, and visitors and businesses. That could be viewed more favorably because it's more accessible to more people. And then if you've identified a market for the target material, if you already have a vendor who's going to collect and process your target material, that could be viewed more favorably. And then for the cardboard compactors and the glass roll-offs, the amount of the target material or the tonnage that you estimate would be captured for recovery and recycling. And again, that's just because the more material that you're diverting from the waste stream, the better. And yeah, Rachel reviewed the new criteria this year about applicants located in a disadvantaged community, increase access. And yeah, all of these evaluation criteria and all the other details are linked on the details document. And yeah, then we'll go to my last slide for this section. So just to quickly go over invoicing. Grants are dispersed on a reimbursement basis only. Invoices are due at the end of the fiscal year, so that's June 30th, 2027 for this cycle. And then you must submit 1 request for reimbursement for the equipment and the required signage only, and the proof of purchase in the form of an invoice, which lists the vendor's name and address and the item you purchased. We also give you an invoice cover letter template to kind of help organize that. We also require photos of the equipment in use at your transfer station, and specifically a photo that has the required signage. So these 2 photos show some examples of that signage. We just needed to say that it was funded by a grant from MassDEP. And yeah, you'll get all this information if awarded a grant. And then a last little reminder is that this grant, is more meant to get you started. It might not always cover every single expense associated with your drop-off equipment, but most of those additional expenses could be covered with RDP funds, or you could use your own town funds to further invest and expand. So just to keep that in mind, especially with some of the pricier equipment that the grant might not cover everything. Yeah, you could use RDP or other town funds. And that's it for me, and I'll turn it over to Ron.
Thank you, Michaela. My name is Ron Cochran. I am a regional planner here at MassDEP, and I also manage the Pay-As-You-Throw grant, which is what I'll be covering for today. And as you saw in a previous slide, I'm also a municipal assistance coordinator for Northeast District 1. So Pay-As-You-Throw is one of the most effective, or the most effective tools communities have to actually change behavior and reduce waste. But it's not in just theory, it's actually in practice. When residents see a clear price signal that's tied to how much they throw away, they do respond. And that leads to real measurable reductions in trash, and most often really within the first year of a program. And what makes Pay-As-You-Throw especially powerful is that it doesn't operate in isolation. It really strengthens everything around it. Recycling improves, composting participation increases, and residents really start thinking differently about what they're throwing away. And it's also one of the fairest systems that you can implement. So, like other utilities, like electric and gas and so on, you pay for what you use, which really creates a more equitable approach compared to flat fees. So, from a municipal perspective, PAYT helps reduce disposal costs and creates a way to stabilize budgets over time, especially as hauling and disposal costs continue to rise, as we've seen very clearly. And importantly, this is not untested. Nearly half of Massachusetts communities are already using pay as you throw successfully. So there's really a strong track record to build from. And continuing on the trend of sharing data from our programs, here is our third poll. Rachel could launch that poll. So, municipalities that implement pay-as-you-throw programs generate how much less trash on average than non-PAYT communities? I feel like I'm watching one of those races at the fair. You know, the little horses going by. I'm seeing who's winning here. Just a little bit more. We're almost up to our. By the way, great participation in these polls. It really shows everybody's engaged here. And thank you for participating in these polls. All right. So, what are the results? You all chose 32%. And so now we'll share the answer. 32%. Great job. Very nice. Very nice. Awesome. So yeah, every year we give out a handful of pay-as-you-throw grants, and sometimes they are for upgrades to 35-gallon carts to accommodate a trend in automated curbside collection. And in 2024, we funded 3 brand new pay-as-you-throw programs. So congratulations to Charlton, Townsend, and Westboro. So they brought in our grand total of PAYT munis to 162. And we have a couple of additional municipalities that were awarded in 2025, and they're working through it now. So hopefully by this time next year, we'll have a few more to share. So congratulations to those communities. So this map is something that we come back to every year because it tells a story so clearly. PAYT has a dramatic impact on how much waste a community generates. We're talking an average reduction of 500 pounds per household per year. So that translates directly to lower tipping fees and real savings for your municipality's bottom line. And of course, less waste going out the door is a win for the environment too. Now, if your community isn't reflected so favorably in this map, don't be discouraged. This isn't meant to be a map of shame. It's really a map of opportunity. Every community here started somewhere, and this is exactly the kind of tool that can help point the way forward. So when we ask, what does PAYT mean for a community? The answer really depends on where you are today. If you already have PAYT and you're on this call listening in, and the program's in place, this is a moment to take a step back and evaluate it honestly. How's it performing? Are you seeing the results that you expected? And just as importantly, when was the last time that you really took a hard look at your program? And if it's been a few years since you've even thought about it, that might be a red flag. Strong PAYT programs don't just run on autopilot. They're maintained, adjusted, and improved over time. And the good news is that you don't have to do that alone. As you'll see in a few slides, there are SMRP grant opportunities specifically designed to help communities strengthen and modernize existing programs. Now, if you haven't adopted PAYT yet, the expectation today is that you're not going to leave here and immediately apply for funding. This is a process and a thoughtful one. The first step is education. Build your understanding of how PAYT works and what it could look like in your community. And we have a lot of resources to help with that. And I'll be introducing a new learning opportunity in a few slides that will really help you dive deep on the PAYT topic. So once you've had a chance to learn more yourself, then it's a great opportunity to bring that conversation back to your community. So start by talking with some of your key stakeholders, or perhaps even forming an exploratory committee on the subject that could consist of city officials or town officials, as well as even residents. Next, you can reach out to one of your municipal assistance coordinators, ask questions, and then begin to explore what that path looks like for your community. The goal really isn't to do everything at once. It's really just to make sure that you're moving forward and learning. So really, wherever you are today, just be somewhere on that path towards PAYT. And we understand that implementing pay-as-you-throw can feel like a heavy lift, not just from planning and operational standpoint, but from a political perspective as well. There's a lot of moving parts and a lot of decisions to make along the way. And that's exactly why this technical assistance is built into the grant. So you're not really expected to figure this all out on your own. For most communities, this is something that you're doing for the first time, but it's something that we've helped many communities work through successfully. So we can bring you examples from similar towns. We can help you think through the financials or modeling the program. We can support your outreach and even attend public meetings alongside to help support you. So when you look at pay-as-you-throw as an option, don't think of it as something that you really have to navigate it alone. Think of it as a process where you're going to have experienced support every step of the way, and hopefully through that technical assistance grant. So an important note, we do actually require applicants to complete a TA grant before applying for pay-as-you-throw funds, because we really just want to see your program succeed. Communities that go through the TA process usually start their PAYT programs better informed, better prepared, and with fewer surprises down the road. So just think of it like a running start. All right, so what you're seeing here really isn't a menu that you need to memorize. It's really just meant to show you the range of ways that this grant can support pay-as-you-throw. So at a high level, there's really something here for just about every community, no matter where you are starting from. If you're just beginning to explore PAYT, there's lower cost, lower lift entry points like drop-off programs or hybrid models that can really ease residents into the concept. But if you are ready to go further, the grant also supports more comprehensive approaches like a full PAYT system with carts and really just ways that you can signal, like I said, that right size behavior for your waste limits. And for communities that already have PAYT in place, there's funding, like we said, to improve and refine your program. So whether that's moving to a stronger model, updating your system, or really just aligning your collection approach to your waste reduction goals. So the goal here is that just keep in mind where you sit on this list of opportunities. I'm sure we can meet you somewhere along the line, and this is also fully listed and represented in our grant documentation. All right, and this is something that we introduced, a change that happened in 2025, debuted last year, but it really is worth mentioning again. So for communities who are already locked into a 64-gallon cart, there is an opportunity to take advantage of PAYT funding, which is that if you switch your collection to an every other week trash collection. So if you think that sounds hard to imagine, we actually already have had communities who have taken advantage of this pathway to PAYT. So we encourage you, again, to look into that if that's a right fit for you. All right, so we talked about education opportunity to learn more about PAYT. So if you're looking to dive deeper, we just wrapped up, literally probably it was like 2 weeks ago, a pay-as-you-throw work group series. So this content is super fresh, it's current, it's ready to use. The PAYT work group webinar series was designed to give communities a chance to really dig or dive deep into pay-as-you-throw at your own pace. Each session kind of builds on the last. We walk through everything from the basics all the way up to implementation, your financials, and then long-term program maintenance. And it's a great place to start if you're just beginning to explore the PAYT concept and you just want to understand how it all works. But it's just as valuable if you are even further along in the process and you anticipate any challenges or any new things that are gonna you encounter in your program. We cover a lot in there to help you refine your approach and learn what to expect as you move forward. So again, whether you're just dipping your toes into this topic or you're just like full steam ahead, we want to go for it. This learning series is going to meet you right where you are. So this will be part of the series of links and resources that we're going to give after this presentation is complete. All right. So we are at our first question break. So we've heard from 3 of the 6 grant categories. I'm going to pause here and we're going to take a few minutes to answer your questions on anything that has been shared thus far. So please go ahead and raise your hand in Zoom or put your question in the chat box.
And Allison, if you want to read any questions that came in through the chat, if you think they're appropriate for the group.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had a lot of questions come through the chat. Many of them have been answered in the chat. But I see one here from Kirsten Thomas. Would countertop food waste collection containers ever be considered for the municipalities that don't offer curbside pickup?
For you?
I don't know if Becky, you want to take this or?
Yeah, if you don't have a curbside program, that would not be eligible under the curbside grant. But if you wanted to establish a drop-off program in your municipality, then kitchen countertop bins are an eligible expense under that grant program. But the primary purpose of that program is for a drop-off center. So after setting up the drop-off center, if you have additional funds left over, you can spend those on kitchen counter bins for residents.
The next question is from Marissa Perez Dormitzer. This is about drop-off equipment. So I believe Michaela, can the cardboard compactors be located at a school?
I don't think we've typically had any of the drop-off equipment at schools. I think it's more supposed to be at it's on a bad, yeah, you don't have any history on this, Rachel?
I think this came up last year, and the answer is the same, is that I don't think it's explicitly prohibited, but you would be hard pressed to make a case for diversion of that cardboard from a school being higher than diversion from a transfer station or recycling center which is accessed by much more of the community. And again, like that's just questions in the grant application. It's going to ask about the location, households served using it, and then tonnage. And so it's just, it's not prohibited, but I just don't know at this point how it would score in comparison to other applications.
Thanks. This next question comes from Jessica Caban from the city of New Bedford. Regarding drop-off equipment again, are used containers eligible since new containers are so expensive?
Yes, used containers are eligible. This I think came up last year as well. And the amount that Michaela presented in the drop-off, it says like up to a certain amount. Depending on the container, if it's reused or refurbished or whatever, we might award less than that.
Right. So the next few questions were answered in the chat again, but the next one's from Bernard Cahill. Does DEP also offer any planning type grants to, for example, fund the creation of a regional solid waste plan, something that would guide the types of investment that were discussed today?
So we are going to be talking about some other grants on the next half of this webinar. So stay tuned and we can talk about some other things that might fall into this category. I'm going to be 100% transparent that we don't necessarily want to just fund a plan that's going to sit on a shelf and not be implemented or accessed. So you know, it's just, I think, stay tuned and we'll talk about maybe some more opportunities for that.
Awesome. Looks like this next question from Christopher Lowe is another drop-off equipment question. Is there a criteria that needs to be met for the recycling? How/where for the recycling of glass or paint goes, I'm assuming? Is any information on that?
I saw that one in the chat and I was maybe hoping for a little more information about what they meant by how/where, because there's not a specific criteria, like you have to have this amount of tonnage to qualify. So we don't do that. And then, yeah, for how and where, yeah, I guess we already talked about location, being more at transfer stations. So I'm not sure if that answers your question or if you want to evaluate more, if anyone else has anything to add.
Yeah, I don't think there's any kind of minimum criteria, but we asked the question. So it just is going to be, you know, we want you to have a plan. So you sit, you know, in the application, it asks where this will go. And if you said, I don't know, then that's not going to score very well versus if you say it will be located at my transfer station at such and such an address. So, and it's all kind of part of the review.
All right. Next question. Again, there's been a few more in between answered in the chat. This next one comes from Marlene Connolly. Ipswich is moving to automated pickup, but we already have a one bag free model. If we keep the trash at 35 gallons for the new carts, can we apply for reimbursement for the new carts?
Can you just read that one more time? I just want to I think I know what's going on, but I just want to hear it again.
Yeah, absolutely. Ipswich is moving to automated pickup, but we already have a one bag free model. If we keep the trash at 35 gallons for the new carts, can we apply for reimbursement for the new carts?
Yeah, I mean so if you stick to the 35 gallon cart limit, if that's the cart that you're purchasing, then we would consider that to be what's called a hybrid program. So it's essentially the reason why 35 is the number is because that's what we consider one unit. So if you look at a standard large size pay-as-you-throw bag, that's about the same volume as a 35 gallon cart. So we kind of consider those equal. So when we say we're going to help by funding you to move to a cart model, we want you to stick with that same one unit size, which is 35 gallons. So effectively what you would do as a community, you'd switch to the 35 gallon cart. And then you would say, okay, resident, you get that 35 gallon, that's your one unit free. And then anything over that, you have to then require them to pay for additional overflow by presumably using bags as the overflow. And so that's what makes you a pay-as-you-throw model. And yes, that's what would make you qualify for the grant.
Awesome.
Okay, we maybe have time for like one more question and then we got to move on to the second half.
All right. Yeah, there's one more question in the chat from Ruth Fitzgerald. If you move from PAYT bags to a 35 gallon cart, do you have to use PAYT bags in the carts?
No, you do not. You could essentially be that you could use Glad hefty bags, whatever, because again, we know the size of the cart, and because it's standardized, that's what would keep you at that one unit. So a very, very common model is to say first unit's free. You can, again, you can put Glads and hefties in that first 35, and then the way that people have purchased overflow is by requiring them to buy it as a pay-as-you-throw branded bag through one of the vendors, hopefully on state contract. So like a blue colored bag or a purple bag that we know that the resident purchased.
Great. And that was the last unanswered question that I saw in the chat. So
Perfect. So we're halfway through. I'm going to turn the slides over to our next presenter, who's going to talk about RDP, which is our most popular grant.
Thanks, Rachel, and hi, everyone. My name is Kathy Dudnoff, and I'm the lead for the Recycling Dividends Program, aka the RDP grant. Next slide. So here's some background information about RDP for anyone that's new to SMRP. RDP is an incentive-based program that provides payments to municipalities that have implemented specific programs and policies around recycling, reuse, and composting. The RDP application is essentially a menu of these best practices for waste reduction. There are 10 categories with 23 points available across the application. Each option within a category has a point value ranging from 1 to 5, depending on that option's demonstrated impact on waste diversion and the level of effort involved. You can only pick one option per category. There are dependent questions that come up asking you to provide additional information, links, or attachments to verify the option you're claiming. Our team uses this information during our evaluations. Any link provided should go directly to the municipal website where the relevant information is located. Points are awarded for new or ongoing programs and activities that were implemented or in effect during fiscal year 26 from July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2026. Municipalities that earn at least 1 point are eligible for RDP. And I just want to note that everything I'm reviewing today, which is going to be a lot, can be found in our details document, which is linked on the slide and is a really great resource to refer back to. Next slide. This slide shows how payments are calculated for each municipality. The points are assigned a value based on the number of households served by the municipal trash program. There are 2 levels of funding, basic and advanced. Municipalities that earn 1 to 9 points will earn the value under the basic level. Municipalities that earn 10 points or more will earn the value under the advanced level. The advanced level points are 30% more in value than the basic, and RDP environmental justice populations will earn the advanced level point values even if the total points earned are less than 10. RDP's environmental justice populations are defined as those communities in which 45% or more of their residents live in an EJ census block group that meets the combined criteria for either minority population and income components, or minority population, income, and English isolation components, as defined in this slide. This is also in the details document if you wanted to read more closely through the definitions. Next slide. And these are the 51 municipalities that meet the combined criteria for EJ. They are the same as last year. These munis will receive the advanced level of funding even if they earned 9 points or less. The way we define RDP EJ communities may be changing for Spring 2027's application, so this list may look a little different next year. As of right now, we have no further information to share, but we will be sure to communicate changes out as soon as possible. Next slide. So this is the list of categories for the Spring 26 RDP application. I'm going to review each category briefly in a moment, but if you recall last year's application, we made quite a few changes to most categories. And because of that, we wanted to make sure that there were no big changes to this year's application. Our intent from the start was to keep things the same for at least Spring 25 and Spring 26, so munis could plan for their programs. That being said, a couple of changes were made for this year that I will call out as I go along. Most were text changes to help clarify what we mean for some options and activities, but there is one major change, a positive change, that I will discuss in a few minutes. And remember, everything I go over today can be found in that details document. Before I move on, we have another poll for you. How many municipalities earned points in all 10 categories last year? Let's see. Everyone's very positive, not saying yet 0. So we'll have this. Oh no, someone shows 0. That's not a bad thing. Let's see. A good mix here. Okay, so the answer is 5, shout out to East Longmeadow, Greenfield, Groton, Harvard, and Rockport, who earned points in all 10 categories last year. This is especially awesome because, like I said earlier, RDP is a menu of waste reduction best practices, which means these munis are doing it all. They represent the western, central, and northeast parts of the state, which is great to see because we hope that this means that the opportunity to implement best practices across all categories is attainable for all. Next slide. Okay, so time to get into the categories. Up first is the bulky items category, which targets materials that are not included in any of the waste disposal bans or any other category in RDP. To earn the point, the muni must collect at least 3 items from this list and charge at least $5 each. The items include upholstered furniture, wooden furniture, toilets, sinks, and carpet. The $5 fee is what makes this a best practice. Otherwise, it's just a regular trash program. Next slide. What we're looking for when verifying this is a fee schedule on the municipal website. It should show at least 3 of the items called out with an associated fee of at least $5. So up on screen is an example from the town of Warwick. On their website, you can easily find the items listed along with their associated fee. Next slide. Okay, so next is the Center for Hard to Recycle Materials, or CHARM category. A CHARM is a location or a few locations within the municipality where certain items are collected for recycling or reuse. It offers residents a convenient way to drop off items that can't go in the regular recycling. The CHARM must be within the municipality or in an adjacent community. For rural areas, the CHARM must be within 10 miles. This category is the only category with a major change this year, which you can see on screen because I tried to make the font as big as possible to highlight that there was a change made. So we added another point to CHARM. If you're collecting 12 items, which includes 2 required items plus 10 optional items from the list, 12 times a year, your municipality will now earn 3 points instead of 2. If you are collecting 8 items, which includes 2 required items and 6 optional items from the list 12 times a year, your municipality will now earn 2 points instead of 1. We've also added a brand new option to earn 1 point. If you collect 8 items, the 2 required plus 6 optional from the list, and you collect these items at least 9 times a year, you will earn 1 point. We were able to add an extra point into this category, which is exciting, and hopefully a meaningful change that reflects both the effectiveness of CHARMs in keeping hard to recycle materials out of the trash and regular recycling streams, plus the level of effort that it takes to run a CHARM. We added the new option for 1 point because we removed the 6 times a year option for Spring26, which stops some munis from earning points in this category. We are hopeful that the 1 point option at 9 times a year will help munis return to CHARM or help others who never earn CHARM points have a goal to aim for. Some things to keep in mind for this category. The required items are the same as last year, so mercury-bearing products and textiles must be collected. If one or both of these items are not collected, you will not be eligible to earn points in CHARM. Next, the items must be collected for recycling or reuse, not disposal. In the RDP application for each item collected, you must identify the recycling processor or reuse organization, not the hauler. And finally, CHARM sites must be listed on Beyond the Bin, and the items you claim in your application should match these items listed on your Beyond the Bin listing. And I will talk a little bit more about the Beyond the Bin requirement in just a moment. Next slide. So here's a look at some of the optional items for CHARMs with some additional information provided in green, which shows some of the exceptions. This additional information can also be found in the details doc for you to review later. If there are no exceptions listed, it's intended to be that way. Please know that you can always use the comments box at the end of the application to give us any additional information if needed. I want to call out just a few things on this slide. First, e-waste typically includes computers, laptops, TVs, and printers. Household battery collections must include lithium-ion batteries. And paint collection must include oil-based paint. And collecting paint 6 times a year qualifies for CHARM. Next slide. Here are the remaining optional items. Plastic bags, if they are collected at a retailer, that doesn't count. Boat wrap and agricultural wrap are considered plastic film, and collection for these items once per year will count. For shredded paper, an event once per year counts, and the same goes for string lights, so once a year is okay. And yard waste can be collected curbside, or it can be drop off 4 times a year. Next slide. Back to the Beyond the Bin requirement for a moment. To earn points, your charm locations must be listed on the Beyond the Bin search directory. If your municipality collects a few items at another location within the municipality, like textiles at schools, for example, there should be an additional listing for that location. You can use the Add a Listing form on the Beyond the Bin homepage to add listings as needed. There is a video tutorial and a PDF guide with steps on how to fill out the form. If you earned charm points last year, your listing is still live on Beyond the Bin. The PDF guide also has a section explaining how to search for your listings so you can make sure everything looks accurate. But if you do need to make updates, please email mass.recycles@mass.gov. Remember that the items claimed in charm should be reflected on the Beyond the Bin listing. Last year, we came up with some workarounds for items that were not collected year-round, like shredded paper or string lights. Items tied to specific collections like these can be put in your listing's important note. If you have any questions on how to accurately list things on Beyond the Bin, please send us an email. So before I move on from Beyond the Bin, we have another poll for you. How many views were logged to the Beyond the Bin directory in 2025? I can't see if the poll, oh, there it is. Rachel, I'm seeing, yeah, the poll from before.
Mark, it's not letting me on.
That work?
There we go. Somebody else did it.
Okay, so how many views to the Beyond the Bin directory were logged in 2025? A lot of guesses for 250,000. It's a respectful number. Okay. So the answer actually is 650,000. It always amazes us how many people are viewing information on Beyond the Bin, and this is why it's so important that the information is accurate and up to date. Next slide. The next category is for curbside recycling regulations. This section is split into 2 subsections. The first, which is up on screen, is for comprehensive private hauler regulations. The second is for mandatory recycling regulations. You can only choose one option overall. For comprehensive private hauler regulations, you can earn points if you are a municipality with curbside, drop-off, or subscription service. You would earn points for having private hauler regulations that require bundled trash and recycling services at a rate that reflects the cost of both services and mandatory recycling for generators. To earn 3 points, the Muni actively enforces regulations that apply to both residents and businesses. To earn 2 points, the Muni actively enforces regulations that apply to residents only. To earn 1 point, the Muni has adopted these regulations. For all 3 options, we ask for a copy of the regulations. For the enforcement options, we also want to see proof of enforcement, which can look like a tracking sheet or a copy of a warning letter. The key here is enforcement on the hauler with respect to recycling services and bundled pricing. Next slide. This is an example of a letter to a hauler within the town of Ashby about an issue where the hauler was charging more money to their customer in order to collect recyclables, which is against the town's regulations requiring bundled pricing. The letter went on for a couple pages, but basically requires that this hauler eliminate the extra charge and come into compliance with the regulations or else receive a $500 fine and have their permit revoked. Next slide. The next subsection in this category is for mandatory and quality recycling requirements, where the municipality has a mandatory recycling rule, code, bylaw, or ordinance requiring residents to recycle or be subjected to a fine or other penalty, like rejected carts. Only municipalities that have curbside service can earn points for this. To earn 3 points, the Muni must be actively enforcing these rules and measuring results through an annual recycling audit done by the Materials Recovery Facility to assess contamination levels. To verify this, we ask for a copy of the regulations, proof of enforcement, and a copy of the audit results. The audit must have been done within this fiscal year, and it's a best practice in contracting and a way for municipalities to measure performance and keep an eye on what's going on. To earn 2 points, the Muni must be actively enforcing these rules, no audit required. And to earn 1 point, the Muni's hauler enforces these rules, either because it's in their contract or it's part of their standard operating procedure. The key here is enforcement on generators with respect to mandatory recycling. Next slide. This is an example of a residential letter from the city of Fitchburg, referencing the town code for mandatory recycling, explaining why the carts were rejected, and giving information on how to fix this issue going forward. Next slide. Okay, for the diversity, equity, and inclusion in recycling programs category, Munis must complete 3 activities, which includes 1 required activity and 2 optional, to earn 1 point. The required activity is to have a translated trash and recycling guide or a Recycle Smart Massachusetts translated guide available on your website or sent out to residents as a mailer. When we say trash and recycling guide, we mean something along the lines of what the Recycle Smart Recycling Guide looks like. And I've included the Spanish version on this slide as an example. It tells residents what to put in the recycling and also what to keep out and put in the trash or find another outlet for. Our goal for this is to have the basics out there for residents that do not speak English, so they have a resource for what can be recycled and what should be trashed. You don't have to use the Smart Recycling Guide, but it is available in 11 languages other than English, and you can download it easily from the Recycle Smart website. What we don't want to see for this requirement is just information about trash pickup day, for example. While that is worthwhile information to have translated, our intention is to provide a guide for what items go where. Next slide. Here's a great example of a translated trash and recycling guide that's not from Recycle Smart. This is from the city of Holyoke. It shows what to recycle on top, and then on the bottom, what to trash, and this was easily found on their website. I just want to make a note here that RDP funds can be used to translate outreach and education materials. Next slide. The other 2 optional activities to earn the point can be picked out of a list of 12. I've included a few of these options here. There are activities for other translated materials like signs at a drop-off or a translated household hazardous waste guide. There are also activities related to low income. For the reduced transfer station access fee for low income or people experiencing hardships option or activity, we've added to it to encompass curbside communities. So if your community offers a reduced annual fee for curbside collection programs, you can count that as an activity. To view the full list of activities, please check out the details document. Next slide. Here's an example of translated signage at a drop-off location. This is from the city of Methuen, and they have this nice big sign that tells you what to recycle in both English and Spanish, and then it tells you what to keep out of the recycling too. Next slide. Up next is the household hazardous waste category. There are 2 subsections. The first has options for municipalities that had either a permanent HHW collection center or held 6 or more collection opportunities in this fiscal year for their residents. The second has options for municipalities that hosted at least 2 opportunities this fiscal year. All HHW events must be registered with the MassDEP notification for HHW events system. For all options in this category, we will be asking about event dates and times to confirm when they were, and we cross-check this with the notification system. Please make sure your event info is accurate because it's helpful for us in terms of data collection and understanding what options are available for residents for HHW. Next slide. The next category is for organics and food waste. There are 4 subsections. Munis can only choose 1 option overall. The materials we ask for to verify points vary depending on the option selected, but for the most part, we want to see the outreach, education, and promotion that goes along with your organics program. It's important to pair these programs with education so that residents understand what to do. The first subsection is for curbside collection. The options are the same as last year, except for one change. For the second option, weekly collection from households participating in a municipally funded or subsidized private subscription collection program, we've increased the performance metric from 3% to 5% for this year. This is because majority of the munis earning this point last year had well over 3% participating anyway. Munis must document that at least 5% of households served trash participate in this program to receive the full 2 points. If it's less than 5%, you will earn 1 point. Next slide. The next subsection is for drop-off center collection. There were no changes for these options. You can earn 2 points if you're collecting food waste at the municipally owned collection center and you offer backyard composting bins to residents at cost or less. Or you can earn 1 point for collecting food waste at a municipal collection center for those that do not sell backyard bins. Next slide. Here are the last 2 subsections. The first is for backyard composting, which has one option for 1 point to offer backyard composting bins to residents at cost or less. The last subsection focuses on food rescue. If the municipality or school coordinates a local program for food rescue and donation through programs like share tables, community fridges, or food pantries, and it supports groups like students, low-income residents, or others in need, you could earn 1 point. Next slide. Up next is the recycling center access category. Our focus for this category is increased access to recycling centers and promotion of this access. You can earn 2 points for allowing haulers to tip recyclables, or 1 point for allowing access to local businesses, or to residents not served by the municipal program, or to non-residents. For any of these options, we will ask for a copy of the outreach used to encourage them to use the drop-off. Next slide. And here's an example of a letter sent to businesses from the town of Chesterfield. It references why businesses should be recycling and encourages them to use the recycling center. Next slide. The next category is for reuse programs. A municipality can earn 2 points if they complete at least 3 activities from the list, or earn 1 point if they complete 1 activity from the list. There are 17 activities to choose from, and I added a few here as an example. It ranges from things like swap shops to repair events, zero waste days, dishwashers in schools, deconstruction, and more. Verification for these activities vary. We may ask for a link to the municipal website or a description of the activity. We did try and clarify the language for the option where a municipality has established a process or procedure for sharing surplus goods that are no longer needed between its municipal departments and schools before recycling or disposal. This is different than just referencing the procurement guidelines in Chapter 30B, and the new EPP policies are not sufficient for this. This process takes it a step further and creates a way for the departments to go about promoting items in good condition for reuse. Next slide. Up next is the solid waste reduction category, and here is a look at the options. You'll see that we have point ranges for the full and modified pay-as-you-throw options. This is because of the performance metric we added last year, which I will explain in just a moment. A full pay-as-you-throw program could earn 4 to 5 points, and the modified program could earn 3 to 4 points. Please note that the RDP application will calculate the point values at the maximum amount, so it will say 5 points for full pay-as-you-throw and 4 points for modified, but depending on what we find in our evaluation, the award may be 1 less point. Next slide. This slide explains the performance metric for the full and modified PAYT options that could impact the points earned. Before I get into the details, I want to define what we mean by eligible households. Eligible households differ based on the service type of the primary trash program. For drop-off programs, we consider all households in the muni eligible because technically all households can access the drop-off facility as long as they get a permit or sticker. For curbside programs, we look at the number of households served by the municipal trash program because in many cases, not all households might be eligible for curbside pickup. This happens a lot with large condos or apartment buildings, which are often served by private haulers. With that definition in mind, here's how the performance metric works. Full or modified pay-as-you-throw municipalities may receive the maximum points available, so 5 points for full PAYT or 4 points for modified, when they have 50% or more eligible households participating in the pay-as-you-throw program, or they have less than 50% eligible households participating, but they have comprehensive private hauler regulations. Municipalities with less than 50% participation and no regulations will receive 1 less point. So instead of 5 points for full pay-as-you-throw, they would receive 4, and for modified, they would receive 3 points. This metric does not apply to munis claiming pay-as-you-throw points for the first time. Next slide. This slide shows a few scenarios. If you have 1,000 eligible households and 500 or more participate, you will receive the maximum amount of points. If you have 1,000 eligible households and less than 500 participate, but you have comprehensive private hauler regs, you will receive the maximum amount of points. If you have a newly implemented pay-as-you-throw program and you're claiming the pay-as-you-throw RDP points for the first time, you will receive the maximum number of points. On the other hand, if you have 1,000 eligible households and less than 500 participate in the pay-as-you-throw program, and you do not have private hauler regulations, you will receive 1 less point. If you have 1,000 eligible households in the modified pay-as-you-throw program with multiple trash cart sizes available, and less than 500 use a cart that is 35 gallons or less, and you do not have private hauler regs, you will receive 1 less point. I know that was a lot. The performance metric and these scenarios are included in the details doc if you want to read through them again later on. Next slide. We made it. It's the final category. We're almost done with RDP. This is for waste prevention, outreach, and education. First, I want to explain that we are keeping the pizza box rule for this category. We are calling out incorrect pizza box information because we've confirmed it with the MRFs that serve Massachusetts communities and the haulers a bunch of times, and we're all on the same page. It's important that our educational resources be consistent so that residents recycle confidently. That was one of the reasons why the Recycle Smart Massachusetts program was created, to have one consistent statewide list to avoid confusion on what to recycle. The Recycle Smart team still receives questions to this day from confused residents that say their municipality says one thing about pizza boxes and our guidance says another. I want to make this clear. Our evaluation team is not actively looking for this information, but we spend a lot of time on municipal web pages and we see outreach and education resource attachments as we verify all of the programs and activities claimed in RDP. Please be sure that your guidance has been updated and says that pizza boxes are recyclable. If our team comes across incorrect pizza box information, the municipality will not be eligible for this point. Next slide. The intention behind this category is to have residents be met with education on recycling at every possible place, whether it's social media, a newspaper, a billboard, or your municipal website. To earn the point, the municipality must complete 6 activities, which includes 1 required activity and 5 optional. The required activity has 3 components. The muni must 1, have a link to the Beyond the Bin search directory, 2, have a link to the Recycle Smart website, and 3, have the Recycle Smart Recyclopedia widget or something comparable. So that's 2 links and the widget. Next slide. The other 5 activities can be picked from a list of 14. I've included some of the options on this slide. You could do a recycling mailer or a handout at a drop-off location, post on social media or publish in a paper or e-newsletter. You could create or contribute to a local, municipal, or regional guide. You can run messages via sandwich boards, billboards, or lawn signs, which were added back in for this year. Another option is to reshare at least 6 Recycle Smart Massachusetts posts on social media. To earn this activity, you must also be a Recycle Smart partner. Our team recently reviewed our partner list to make sure that we had contacts for each partner. So please review the updated partner list on the Recycle Smart website to confirm that your muni is signed up. If not, please fill out the sign-up form on the Recycle Smart partner page. It takes just a few seconds. If you're not a partner, What are you waiting for? This year, we started sending out partner-exclusive emails that provide graphics that you can use to educate residents and also get credit for this activity. Only partners will be receiving these quarterly emails, so make sure you are signed up. There is one other option I want to highlight because we changed it slightly. Last year, we added this option to host or coordinate a community cleanup event and provide recycling education. We've made this option broader, so you can get credit for tabling at any community event as long as you provide recycling education. This slide wraps up my review of the categories, and I want to remind everyone again to take a look at the details document to see the full list of activities for this category and so much more details for this year's RDP. It's a very helpful resource to refer back to as you fill in the application to make sure that you're selecting the right options and activities to fit the amazing programs you all run. Next slide. Rachel touched on this a little bit earlier, but I want to take a moment to explain what happens after the application period closes. After the deadline, we pull the applications and start our evaluation process. Shout out to the entire SMRP team who all pitch in and help evaluate the RDP applications, which takes quite some time. Last year, we received 283 applications and will likely get a similar number this year. So throughout the summer, our team is reviewing all of the information you provided and may reach out to you with clarifying questions. So please answer those as soon as you see them. After the evaluations, we wait for everything to be approved, and the timing for this varies greatly. We hope to send award letters and the RDP contracts out in November, with the signed contracts being due back in January of next year. Please note that the timeline on screen is the timeline that we aim for, but things can shift and we may not be able to stick to this as much as we want to. RDP is not reimbursement based. The payments are based on the points you earn and their associated value based on the household served. After your signed contract is sent in, it's countersigned by DEP. And at that point, we actually turn the last page into an invoice. Once that invoice is submitted, payments are sent via electronic transfer and take about 45 days to go through. RDP funds can only be spent on waste reduction. They can be carried over to future years and can be saved to fund larger projects. And now I'm going to turn it over to Michaela to talk more about RDP spending.
All right, thanks, Kat. So yeah, this is the first year I've taken over the RDP spending. So if you have any questions about that specifically, you can reach out to me instead of Kat. And I'm going to go into some details. So yes, so funds earned through RDP and through the Regional Small Scales Grant can be used for approved expenditures within waste reduction only. And the first bullet has the approved spending category sheet with several pages of things that you can spend your RDP money on. We do not consider special spending requests, and you can also check out the community spending examples fact sheet that Ron put together for some more inspiration. And there are 12 spending categories in that approved spending sheet. And there's several expenses in each category. I just highlighted a few examples like batteries under toxics reduction. Model programming money can be used for enforcement and PAYT, lots of outreach and education material through RSMA. And you can pay for an event like a repair cafe through the reuse category. So that's only 5 out of 12 categories. There's lots of options there, and a lot of these approved expenses can help start new programs that can earn you more points in next year's RDP cycle. So this slide shows some data from RDP spending reports from 2023 through 2025. And it's a good breakdown to see what munis are spending money on. So equipment has historically been the category with the most spending. We also see model programming being very popular. Last year, we saw a big spike in outreach and education, which was great. And then this year, we saw more money being spent on schools, reuse, closing the loop compared to previous years. So even though those are some smaller categories, it was great to see some spikes. And then the table below shows the total RDP money spent, which is basically the sum of all of the numbers from those individual categories on the chart. And we also have RDP balance carried over from previous year's grants. So munis spent a little less in 2025 than in 2024. It could be due to less grant funding or several other factors. But we were happy to see that the RD balance did go down overall from 2024 to 2025. It's a pretty significant drop of almost $1 million, which is great. But it is still a lot of money that we're carrying over. So we really just want to emphasize how important it is to spend this money and not save it for a rainy day fund. This money is not guaranteed every grant cycle, so definitely spend it while you have it. Yeah, so keep spending our RDP money and look at approved spending sheets for ideas. And then a quick last reminder on this slide that dedicated accounts for RDP were required last year for the first time. And a dedicated account it's meant to make it easier for munis to access and spend and track this money separately. All right, now we'll go into regional small scale initiatives. So on the next slide, Regional Small Scale Initiatives Grant is open for regional groups only, and the amount of funding dispersed is based on the population served. And it has the same spending guidelines as RDP, so you can refer to that same approved spending sheet that I just talked about. And eligibility is limited to those regional groups with the mission of solid waste reduction or management. And the details doc is linked on the slide. And then this slide shows the potential award amount and how it is calculated based on population. Grantees will purchase products based on the approved spending categories, and I put the link again just in case, and then you would request reimbursement. These are all the same as last year. So next we're going to have Allison talk about waste reduction project grants. I just wanted to highlight that these regional groups are also eligible for those grants. So if you're a regional group and you're interested, you can listen more to Allison.
Awesome. Thank you, Michaela. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Allison Buchler. I'm a regional planner with the Municipal Waste Reduction Branch in Boston on the SMRP grant team. I'm fairly new to the team, coming up on a year, but I come from a background of municipal experience from the city of Melrose and the city of Somerville. And just last year, I was in the audience for this very webinar, considering which SMRP grant programs would be best to support the community I was serving, which happens to include this very one. So thank you for sticking through our webinar. We're almost done, but I just have a few slides to review about our open project proposals, which are the grant opportunities for larger scale projects related to waste reduction, organics capacity, and household hazardous waste. So let's dive in. Starting with waste reduction projects, this grant is intended to expand access and increase opportunities for reuse, recycling, composting, or household hazardous waste management. These grants range from $20,000 to $100,000 and are generally completed within 2 years from award. This process includes a scope of work and budget while working closely with MassDEP staff members along the way. And new this year, I just wanted to make a note that there is a maximum of 15% of funds that is allowed for professional services and project management unless otherwise approved by MassDEP. This applies to all of the grants in the open project proposals category. And for waste reduction projects, we awarded 2 last year. That work is currently underway, and we are excited to see the positive impact that they make on the communities that they serve once they're complete. Next slide. And here are some examples of potential waste reduction projects that MassDEP would consider appropriate for an application in the waste reduction project category. There are more details in the grant guidelines document on the website, and there could be more ideas, of course, and we welcome new ideas and innovation, but hopefully this list gives you a good idea of what could be a viable proposal. Next slide. Looking back at what has been funded in the past, awarded projects include regional projects, outreach and education to targeted populations, and larger scale school reuse programs. These are just photos of a few examples that you might remember from the past, including the Paxton Regional Recycling Center, now known as Wachusett Earth Day, pictured here in the middle of this slide. This is a regional partnership of 7 municipalities that provide outlets for recycling and reuse. They have containers, roll-offs, sheds, and other types of storage on site. Additionally, Franklin County Solid Waste Management District has received this grant for an agricultural film recycling pilot program, which is pictured on the left. And the town of Bourne has also received this grant for latex paint reuse, which includes targeted education and outreach material and promotion of reuse of latex paint, which is pictured here on the right. And as you can see from these examples, there's a pretty wide array of what's possible for a waste reduction project. Next slide. The second category is the Organics Capacity Grant. Projects eligible in this category include new or expanded facilities to manage source-separated food waste. The process for this grant is very similar to the waste reduction category, but these grants can range from $20,000 to $250,000. Next slide. And here are some examples of projects we might consider for an organics capacity project. 2 years ago, the town of Winchester was awarded one of these grants for an anaerobic digester. And pictured here on the right is an example of what an anaerobic digester looks like. However, this is not the actual photo of the anaerobic digester that the town of Winchester has installed, but it is very similar. So now we have our 6th and final poll question to ask you all. So Rachel, if you could launch that. Approximately what percentage of municipalities do not have at least biannual, which is twice per year, access to household hazardous waste collection? Lots of different answers here. Give it another few seconds to put your answers in. Okay. So the results should be up now, so you should see those there. So it's pretty split evenly between all those 4 answers. So if we could put the answer up, and it is 35%. So there's 265 municipalities that have reportedly have access to household hazardous waste events at least once per year. But then there's a significant drop to about 185 municipalities that have access to these types of events twice per year. Considering there are 351 municipalities in the Commonwealth, this data shows that there is a really big gap in service for many residents that are trying to do the right thing and dispose of HHW properly, which brings us to the 3rd and final grant opportunity within the open projects proposal category. Next slide, which is the establishment of a permanent household hazardous waste facility. Overall, the details of this grant are generally the same as the last 2 options, with grant awards ranging from $50,000 for a facility that will serve an individual municipality and up to $250,000 for a regional facility. Next slide. We've heard a lot lately about the need for regional household hazardous waste collection events. This has been a grant option for the past few years. In 2021, MassDEP awarded funds for a regional facility in Barnstable County. And in 2023, funds were awarded to develop a regional facility on the South Shore of Massachusetts. And more recently, funds were awarded back in 2025, last year, to a Boston area municipality to make upgrades to an existing HHW facility to increase access for its residents. These projects are in their infancy, and there's not a whole lot to report on at this time, but we are excited to see them once they are complete. Photos on this slide are of a household hazardous waste facility in the town of Devens. Devens was awarded this grant all the way back in 2010. This facility provides centralized permanent household hazardous waste drop-off access to residents and small businesses from 15 member towns. It is still going strong, and if you're considering pushing for a household hazardous waste facility in your area, you may want to reach out to Devens HHW to see what they've done there. Next slide. So there's one application that covers the 3 categories in this open project proposal grant program. Because of the competitiveness of this grant, applicants can only apply to one of these 3 categories. As with other SMRP grants, eligible applicants must be a municipality or a regional entity. If a municipality or a regional entity would like to partner with a nonprofit organization, they certainly can, but the municipality or the regional entity would be the grantee. The online application is just a few questions, but applicants are required to submit a mandatory project proposal. This is a fillable form and is linked here on the slide and also on MassDEP's website. There are instructions for submitting a 4 to 8 page project proposal, which will include a narrative, a work plan, budget, and if applying for a regional project, references and letters of support. The overall details document for these projects, which includes a summary for each category, is also linked on this slide and also on MassDEP's website. Next slide. Project proposals will be evaluated based on the criteria listed here. We have multiple MassDEP staff reviewing and scoring each proposal, so a lot of effort goes into choosing what submissions will be put forward for an award. Next slide. And lastly, I just wanted to go over a general overview of the timeline for these open project proposal grants. So once the municipality or regional entity has been notified of the award, a member of the MassDEP team will reach out to schedule an introductory meeting. MassDEP will explain the next steps of the process, which will include setting up regular check-ins and developing scopes of work. And once the scope is completed, sent back and approved by MassDEP, work can then commence. It is important to note that this is a reimbursement style grant, meaning that municipalities or regional entities must pay for the materials or work ahead of time and submit invoices to MassDEP in order to receive funding in return. Invoicing must be submitted quarterly to MassDEP over the course of the grant, which is, again, about 2 years. When work is complete or almost complete, MassDEP will set up a site visit, if applicable, and then finally, 3 months after the completion of the project, a final report. MassDEP prioritizes projects that fall into these 3 categories within the Open Projects Proposal Grant, and we understand that it is a big undertaking to complete these projects, but our team is here to help along the way. So if you're interested in these grants but are unsure about what project may be best for you in the community that you serve, we suggest that you reach out to your MAC or your Municipal Assistance Coordinator to review the applications together. And this wraps it up for the Open Projects Proposal section of this webinar. I'll now hand it back to Rachel for the final session of Q&A. Thanks, everyone.
So we made it in the time frame. We have about 5 minutes left for questions. If Michaela, could you read them off to me if you see any in the chat, or Becky?
There was one that I wasn't 100% sure. Term question: does participation in a reciprocal arrangement for HHW, including oil-based paint, count for accepting paint 6 times per year?
Was this for charm?
Yes, for charm. I was like, yeah, just
I would have to, yeah, I don't know.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say it might depend on where that collection is taking place, because for charm, we tend to say it's within the community or an adjacent community, or if it's in a rural area, the 10-mile radius. But we don't really ask for individual items to confirm that this is still within the municipality itself that you're claiming the points for. So I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe that's from Marissa Perez Dominster, so maybe we can follow up offline. If there's
the comment, I think Kat said the comment section in the RDP application, we read everything. Please, if there's anything you're unsure about or would like to provide additional clarification for, I would say that's a great place to put that.
And then what else? Looks like a lot have been answered.
There was a waste reduction question. Could Muni partnership within organizations such as the Great Exchange to qualify? And could the muni provide the building and like the Great Exchange operates the reuse facility? So I guess it's a partnership between a municipality and an organization.
Yes, so the municipality would have to apply as the grantee, but they could definitely partner with a nonprofit.
And I think those are the only ones I saw. If there are any that we missed in the questions, I think people can maybe raise their hand or repost it in the questions. Would be my
There's
suggestion.
also one from earlier that I don't think got answered. Will non-3A compliant cities and towns be disqualified from receiving SMRP grants?
Yes. It is our understanding that that will be the case, but it is to be determined. We don't really know. I guess it kind of just depends on what happens there and if there's any kind of compliance extension granted or discussed, but unfortunate. I will put a slide just on here before signing off. Again, it's a reminder of all the important dates related to our grants. So they're open. We've already had people apply. So shout out to those people that were on at like 9 a.m. yesterday and submitting applications. We already have several in. You have until June 1st, right before midnight. Good luck. I guess that's it. So thank you all to our grant team, and we can sign off. And goodbye.